This is Your Life, episode 18.
This is your life. Are you who you wanna be?
Hello and welcome to this episode of This is Your Life. My name is Michael Hyatt, and this is the podcast dedicated to intentional leadership. My goal is to help you live with more passion, work with greater focus, and lead with extraordinary influence. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about vacations. Yep, it's that time of year, and hopefully you're planning to take a little time off this summer if you haven't already. And I want to share with you 7 steps to getting the most from your vacation. I've got some really practical nut and bolt strategies for maximizing your time away and coming back refreshed, re-energized, and renewed. But first, this podcast is brought to you by Dynamic Communicators International, producers of the SCORE, Launch, and Platform conferences. These unique events are designed for professional speakers and those who simply want to communicate more professionally. And we've got a lot of information that'll be coming out over the next few weeks because all 3 of these conferences we have scheduled for this fall, but you can find out more information at dynamiccommunicators.com. So let's talk about vacations. Gail and I are about to take our annual summer sabbatical, so this is very much in our mind. We did this last year in Colorado, took 3 weeks off as I was transitioning out of my role as the CEO of Thomas Nelson and moving more into this full-time role of writing and speaking. So we just wanted a time to kind of get away, reset, refocus, re-energize, re-whatever. And it was such a positive experience that we decided at the end of that this is something we wanted to do every year. Just be really intentional and take kind of an extended vacation. I realize everybody can't do that. This is something that just given the season of our life that we really can do. And so we're going to do it and we're going to be intentional about it. But the benefits of unplugging for a few weeks and refilling the tank are invaluable. Shockingly, some people never take vacations. I guess they think they're somehow indispensable and they can't afford to be away from the office or from their work. Or perhaps others will discover that they're not indispensable. I used to have a guy that worked for me who would never take vacations. In fact, I've had a couple of people that have worked for me through the years that have done this. And, it's never impressive. I kept thinking to myself, what is it about your life that you're either so, fearful or so disorganized that you can't get your work done and take some time off? But it didn't leave a positive impression on me, though I thought, though these people, I think, probably thought they were making a positive impression. And I had, frankly, candid conversations with both of them, but they just had real difficulty unplugging. But vacations are essential for your spiritual, emotional, relational, and physical health. If you've never read The Power of Full Engagement by Jim Lohr and Tony Schwartz, you must do so. I've recommended that on this podcast before, but it's a book that I read with my mentoring group earlier this spring, and I think it was hugely helpful to all of us. But basically what the authors argue in that book is that you and I are not made to continuously surge. We do our best work when we can work hard and then relax and let it go, and then work hard and relax and let it go. So sort of that rhythm of work and rest. And I've talked about that in various contexts, but it is really important when it comes to vacations, an opportunity to really unplug, to get a change of scenery, and to really focus on resetting and refreshing and renewing yourself. If we're not intentional about our vacations, though, we can actually come back from them in worse shape than when we left. You've probably had this experience. I have. I remember years ago when the kids were small, we went to Disney World. I think we had about 3 young girls at the time. Number 4 and number 5 were yet to come, but we had 3 at that time. And we went, of all the possible times in July, to Orlando. I mean, it was hot. It was miserable. And, it just wasn't that enjoyable. And I remember coming back from that going, gosh, I can't wait to get back to the office where, it's safe, where it's less stressful. But that was just a stressful vacation. And I don't know what the kids remember, but that's my memory of it. But we weren't intentional. And so it wasn't a positive experience. But it doesn't have to be this way. Several years later, we went to Scotland and took our 4th, or I guess it was our 5th daughter with us at the time, Marissa. And we had an unbelievable, terrific time because we really planned it. We were thoughtful about it. We sort of set the boundaries before we left. And it was one of those where we came back totally renewed, totally refreshed, really positive experience. And then I had one of the most productive seasons of my career following that vacation. But here's my premise for this episode. You'll be more rested, re-energized, and refreshed if you're intentional about your vacation and do a little planning. So let me just suggest the following 7 steps. Number 1, understand the various types of vacations. And I've got a couple of headings here that I would encourage you to use as you think about your vacation. First of all, what's the purpose? We went earlier this year, Gail and I, to Fiji. I mean, it was, fantastic trip, but it was primarily, at least the first half of that vacation, was a health cleanse. So we did some juicing. We really focused on our health and our eating. And so that was really the purpose of it, was just to kind of reset our bodies and our physiology for optimal output. Or how about just a change of pace? Sometimes this is the only purpose. This could even be a staycation. You don't have to go anywhere. And I've done plenty of those where, either I couldn't afford to go on a vacation or I didn't want to leave home because I travel so much. Home is the place that I want to be. And so just having the change of pace was nice. Another purpose is rest and renewal. Several years ago, I had to go on a business trip to Rio de Janeiro. So I took Gail and my 2 youngest daughters. And after we did the business in Rio, we drove up to Búzios, which is on the coast of Brazil, on the eastern coast. I guess it's the only coast of Brazil. But it was a fantastic experience. Just this kind of lazy, quiet fishing and surfing village. And we hung out there for a week, and it was totally refreshing. I came back so energized. Another purpose could be a spiritual pilgrimage. I did this about 15 years ago when I went to Mount Athos in Greek and went all around these monasteries. There are about 21 monasteries there on Mount Athos. It's a peninsula that juts out from Greece into the Aegean Sea, and those monasteries have been there forever. And we just had a great time making that spiritual pilgrimage. Another purpose is connection. Time with friends or time with family. And we've done both of those. We typically take a family vacation in the fall to Seaside, Florida. Then also in the fall, we take a few days and go with some friends up into the mountains of Colorado. And we've done that for about 10 years now. And it's just a time to reconnect. And there's very few things in my life that re-energize me as much as spending time with people that I care about. Another purpose could be sightseeing. This was a little bit of what our Scotland trip was, although the pace was such that it was refreshing, but we just wanted to go out and see the sights. And so we rented a car, we drove all over Scotland, and it was a great time. It could be a specific activity as your purpose. Like I've been golfing in Ireland, I've been fishing in Alaska, but those were just a specific focus, a specific activity that we enjoyed while we were taking our vacation. And it was just, again, a great change of pace. So purpose is one thing that you should consider as you're planning vacation. Another thing is the location. Nothing wrong with a staycation. If that's the only thing you can do is stay at home, putter around the house, try to do some different activities, whatever it may be, just the change of pace can be very helpful. Could be a regional location. For example, we're going on this vacation here in a few weeks and we're not driving far. I've been traveling so much this spring that the thought of going very far and spending a lot of time on the road is not very appealing. Plus, Gail and I enjoy just driving in the car. So we're going to drive up to a place in the Tennessee mountains and spend a few weeks up there. It could be a domestic location, someplace within your country of origin, or it could be an international trip as well. I enjoy those from time to time. I do find that I have to build in some recovery time on the back end because the travel is increasingly difficult as I get older. Another category is people. You could spend a vacation alone, go on a private retreat, have some solitude. That's a great thing to do. Frankly, I've only done this a couple of times in my life and only for a few days, and it was valuable, but I'm thinking about doing that in the future for a more extended time. Another thing in terms of people is just with your spouse. Gail and I always try to get away a couple times a year, just the two of us, in this vacation, this sabbatical that we've got coming up. That's exactly what we're going to do. It's going to be only the two of us, nobody else. I cannot wait. Family vacations, another thing to consider under people. We do that in the fall. That is a different kind of vacation. It's very important for us for reconnecting, but it's a different kind of vacation. Under people, you could consider your friends or strangers or acquaintances, particularly if you're doing some kind of activity. Sometimes you're with people that you don't know as well because the activity is the focus of the vacation, not so much the relationships, although sometimes through the activity, you really get to know those people and it becomes a very positive experience. I think another thing to consider under the various types of vacations, though, is the pace. Is it going to be slow and restful with a loose agenda that's not so pre-planned? Or is it going to be more fast-paced? Is it going to have a specific agenda where you're moving from site to site? It doesn't matter. I'm just suggesting that you be intentional. Probably the last thing that you need to consider as you're understanding the various types of vacations is what you're going to do about your online activity. And I think there are three options here. One is that you could remain online. And I think, frankly, this is usually a bad idea. I've done it many times, and I never feel quite rested at the end of my vacation because not that much changes. So much of my life is spent in front of the computer that if I do that when I'm on a vacation, it's not that refreshing. So if you remain online, nothing really changes except the scenery. But hey, if that's, if you have to do it, like if you're in the middle of a transaction, if you're an investment banker or a realtor or a sole proprietor or somebody who has to be in contact with the office for some reason or another, and again, if that's the best you can do, then do it. Something is better than nothing. Another option is to go completely offline. And I try to do this a couple of times a year. In fact, I'm doing it for our upcoming sabbatical, and it's like a digital fast. It detoxes the soul, relieving you from the constant ping of the outside world. And it takes some courage, honestly, to do this, but it's well worth the initial effort it takes to unplug. And just a warning here is you'll experience a little stress for the first few days because you're getting out of your routine and you're just almost reflexively checking the internet, checking your email, checking Twitter, checking Facebook, whatever. And it takes a while to change that pattern and to recondition your brain. But boy, it is so worth it. A third alternative here is just to use a hybrid. And for me, this is sometimes the best option. It means that I do remain online, but I set strict boundaries for what I will and what I won't do. And that gives me the freedom to stay somewhat connected without feeling obligated to reply to every email. In fact, when I do that kind of vacation, I usually set my vacation notices and my other messages to set people's expectations that I'm not going to respond. And then if I do, it's just a plus for them. But I don't want to feel the obligation to have to do that. But I want to be able to monitor the email traffic. So again, you choose what makes sense for you. And that leads me to the second step for getting the most from your vacation, which is to choose the vacation that makes sense for you. What do you need? That's the question you need to ask yourself. What do you need at this point in your life? And then ask, what do the other people that I'm going with need? If you're going with your family, if you're going with your spouse, if you're going with friends, what are their needs? And I, as you probably know, like to start with the end in mind. So to get clear on the outcome, how do you want to feel when you come back from the vacation? That's so important, whether it's rested or refreshed or stimulated because you were exposed to new ideas, or you went on a tour and you were exposed to new locations. But get clear on the outcome and negotiate it with everybody else that's involved so that when you get to the end of it, you're not disappointed and frustrated because the vacation didn't accomplish what you wanted it to accomplish. So choose the vacation that makes sense for you. Third step, get caught up before you leave. This is key. Even if you have to work late for a few nights before you leave, you'll rest better knowing your physical and digital inboxes are empty. And if you've been practicing good email habits along the way, and you can see episode number 5, how to take control of your email inbox for some detail on this. But if you're practicing good email habits along the way, this won't be as overwhelming as it may sound. And I actually block most of a day or two prior to my vacation so that I can focus on completing my desk work. And this enables me to leave work without any guilt or regret. And in this particular situation, facing this upcoming sabbatical, I've actually got 3 days blocked where I'm going to do nothing but get caught up on some things that, frankly, in the rush and the hurry of this spring, I haven't been able to do. Paperwork around the office, cleaning my closet out, and kind of reorganizing my hard disk, and a few of the things that frankly, get me excited, but will allow me to leave the office and put that behind me, having organized it. So get caught up before you leave. By the way, One of the most productive times of the year for most people is that week before vacation, because most people intuitively know that they'd like to be caught up before they leave for vacation. So everybody usually, really hunkers down, gets focused, and most people are really productive in those few days or that week leading up to their vacation. Number fourth step in getting the most from your vacation is to delegate authority to act in your absence. Hopefully, you're already delegating authority as a matter of course. But as a good leader, you want to make as few decisions as you can, and you want to push authority and responsibility down to the lowest level possible. When I was in the corporate world, I also appointed one of my direct reports to act as my proxy in my absence. So I would send out an email to my immediate team and say something like this: while I'm away, I have authorized Joe to make any decisions that need to be made on my behalf. He has my complete confidence. Whatever decisions he makes will have my support when I return. I can tell you what, an email like that suddenly invests the person that you're delegating to with authority and your confidence, and they take it very seriously. It also keeps things from getting bottlenecked while you're gone. Most decisions like this can wait. I can't think, frankly, of a single instance when anyone had to use this authority. But regardless, the work keeps moving while I'm away, and no one can claim that they couldn't move forward because I was absent. So it's just a great way to keep things moving forward in your absence. Fifth way to get the most from your vacation, or fifth step, is to set other people's expectations. Now, make sure your voicemail and your email notifications are turned on, your out-of-office messages, and tell people you're not going to be checking messages. Tell them what to do in an emergency. You should also tell them when you return so they know when to expect a reply. And in all the years, 30 years of my career, I can think of only one time where it was a genuine emergency where somebody had to call me on my vacation and interrupt it because of some crisis that happened at the office. And frankly, that was a time when one of our key employees really got into some trouble, and it required some quick decision making on my part and my partner's part to deal with it. And so we did. So he called me, and, it took about 20 minutes, and that was the end of it. I didn't deal with it till I got back. By the way, a few of my listeners ask if I know of a way to do this with text messages, to set an out-of-office message for your text message. And particularly one pastor wrote to me and said that while he was on his recent vacation, that his church members kept pinging him with text messages, knowing that he wasn't checking his voicemail and wasn't checking his email messages. And he said it was just, really distracting and frustrating to him. And did I know a way to set a text message auto reply? And I did some research on this, and unfortunately the answer is no. I couldn't find an iPhone app. I couldn't find some service to work through the carriers. Like I use AT&T, nothing there. Hopefully this is something that will be part of iOS 6 when it's released this fall from Apple. I know they've got a do not disturb function, and I hope that they consider these text messages as well, because increasingly most of us are getting more text messages, and it's kind of like, a back door that people can use if we don't close it and if we don't set the expectation there. Also, before you leave, send out an email to your direct reports, your key colleagues, anyone outside the company you're working with closely. Tell them you're going on vacation and that you're going to unplug, and if you are, for your own good and for theirs. So tell them you're going on vacation and that you're going to unplug, if you are, for your own good and for theirs. So I think to set those expectations are clear and give them a little time to react, maybe a few days before you go on vacation. So if they've got something urgent or some piece of business that needs to be taken care of before you leave, they can do that. I, by the way, used to have a boss that was terrible about this. He was very secretive, and he would just suddenly disappear. And I would get frustrated that he wasn't responding, only to discover a few days later that he was on vacation, because his assistant would leak it to me, but he didn't want anybody to know. And I'm not quite sure why that was, but the lack of communication didn't help either of us. The sixth way that you can get the most from your vacation is to focus on the purpose of your vacation while you're on vacation. Be present. Don't be thinking about the office, all the stuff that you left undone, wondering what's happening in your absence. Don't be thinking about what you're going to be doing when you get back, but really focus on the people that you're with or the purpose for which you went on the vacation to begin with, and be fully engaged there. I think, for me at least, that is the most restorative thing I can do. The thing that refreshes my spirit more than anything is to be present, because so many times when I'm in just a normal workaday world, I'm not focused on the here and now. I'm thinking about the future, what I've got to do for tomorrow, something that keeps me from being present. And some of that's necessary, so I'm not begrudging it. But at least on your vacation, be present to what it is that you're experiencing. Beautiful scenery, beautiful sights, the people you're with, the rest that you need. Attend to your own heart, your own spirit, whatever it is. But focus on the purpose of your vacation. And then the seventh step for maximizing or getting the most from your vacation is to block the first day when you get back to catch up. This is also very important. No matter how well you prepare, the work is still going to pile up while you're gone. And hopefully, if you've implemented the previous steps, you'll experience a significant drop in the volume of stuff, but you're going to still have some when you get back. For example, I'm going to have some email messages that people have been patiently waiting for me to respond. They weren't urgent, but they're still important, and I'm going to have to deal with those. And if it's like it usually is, there's usually going to be a couple hundred messages that have accumulated that I'm going to have to get through. And so what I try to do is to schedule a day on my calendar, literally block that out so my assistant doesn't put anything else on it when I return, but so that I can focus on just having a soft re-entry so that I can get caught up and really face the day without, dreading coming back from my vacation because I've got a huge pile of meetings the first day I'm back or something that's going to require a lot of work. But I just want to get caught up and get ready to face the coming week or whatever interval it is. So your vacation is more important than you think. And I would just say in conclusion, if you're going to stay healthy spiritually, emotionally, relationally, and physically, you need to be intentional about them. And I really believe these 7 steps can help you get the most from your vacation. So I want to go to a few listener questions. I had some great ones come in. The first one is from Austin Hill.
Hey, Michael. This is Austin Hill from Fort Dodge, Iowa. You can check out my work at austindhill.com. My question for your podcast about unplugging while on vacation is for those of us who work full-time in other careers, we only really have time to do our writing and our social media engagement in our vacation and free time. What would be some guidelines you have for people in that situation about how they can unplug while they're on vacation as well? Thanks a lot.
Austin, that's a great question. And I would say that writing for me is one of the things that I really enjoy doing at any time, but especially on my vacation because I'm undistracted in a way that I'm not during the week. Even though I allocate a couple of days a week to write, still when I'm on a vacation, the more extended time is really helpful. And for me, it's sort of comparable to painting. Some people like to go off and paint on a vacation or do something creative and it restores their soul. Well, the same thing is true for me with writing. And sometimes that does require research on the internet. So if you want to stay plugged into that, I think that's fine. Again, it goes back to the purpose. Whatever your intention is, just, be intentional and it's totally up to you. With regard to social media, I want to disengage from that personally. If you're counting on your vacation and you're saying that you're working and you can't do social media engagement, you can't really do it on your vacation either. I mean, I don't think that's a good strategy. And it's not like you're going to, not do it the rest of the year and suddenly do it on your vacation and somehow that's going to give you a leg up on social media. I don't think that's the case. I would recommend unplugging, at least for some of the vacations that you take, or at least for some of the time you're on vacation. On this sabbatical that's coming up for me, I'm going to unplug the whole time from social media. And I can tell you there'll be some consequences to that, and I'll get to that more here in another question. But again, be intentional, do whatever serves your purpose in your vacation. The next question comes from Jen McDonough.
Hi, Michael. This is Jen McDonough. I'm from livebeyondawesome.com. I live in Lindstrom, Minnesota. My question is, in regards to maximizing my vacation, is it okay to be checking my email, say when we're traveling in the car or in between places? Or do you recommend, say like on the weekends when we are on vacation, totally disconnected? Is it okay to sneak in a little bit during the downtimes or stay away from it entirely? Thank you.
Well, I think what's important, and I've really already said it, Jen, is to be intentional about whatever you do and not to just sort of slip into that mindless kind of thing that most of us do where we're just checking it because, we're bored or because it's habit, but to really be intentional about it. I will tell you that when you're checking into email, even if it's in the car or it's just periodically, it is time when it does make it difficult to be present with the ones that you're with and really to be focused on the purpose that you have your vacation. So, I do recommend at least once a year unplugging completely from email. I mean, just do it as an experiment and notice what happens in your spirit, in your heart. Notice what happens to those around you. Notice what happens to the entire experience. In fact, it'd be a great blog post or a podcast after you've done that experiment. The next question comes from Michael Nichols.
This is Michael Nichols at michaelnichols.org in Clemson, South Carolina. I have a question for this week's podcast on vacation. Do you recommend that when we go on vacation, we don't check email, check in, that type of thing? I heard Seth Godin tell a story one time when he was in a hotel. Somebody came in and was a little miffed that he was checking email and stuff while he was on vacation. And he made the statement that if you love what you're doing, then you don't have a problem doing that. That's kind of the way that I feel. Just wondering your input. Look forward to the podcast. Have a great one.
Well, I love Seth. And by the way, that was the same question that Jen basically asked, but because there was this twist with the Seth Godin story, and I thought it would be good to sort of address that. Certainly, I love what I do, but I think it's important to sort of have this rhythm where I'm not doing what I love to do all the time. I think I do better what I love to do if I've got this whole perspective of surging and then retreat and this rhythm of surging and retreat. So for me, at least, it helps to completely disconnect and to focus on something else. I give out constantly, and I know you probably do too, where you're giving out in some way, whether you're blogging or you're podcasting or you're just leading a team or you're trying to create something else, whatever your line of work is, but you're probably giving out all the time. And so you've got to be intentional about sort of refilling the bucket if you're going to have anything to give. And I just find that being released from the constant interruption and the constant ping of email, because every one of those represents somebody asking for something. Usually, I don't get too many emails where people are telling me that I won the lottery or they want to give me this or give me that. But it's usually a request in some form. So just to disengage from that for a bit of time and to get alone, I think is very helpful. The next question comes from Michelle Cachette.
Hi, Michael. My name is Michelle Cachette. I'm calling from Denver, Colorado, and I blog at michellecachette.com. I'm a big believer in the benefits of unplugging. However, even though I know it's important, I also feel a pretty significant loss of momentum every time I disengage for more than a day or two. Not only am I slow to get back in the groove when I return, but I've noticed my readers and followers are as well. So do you have any suggestions for how to minimize this disconnect after unplugging for any length of time? I look forward to your feedback.
For me, I want to make it my goal to create a life that doesn't require my constant intervention, especially at work life. And, if we have to be present all the time, 24/7, 52 weeks a year to keep, sort of the plates spinning, to keep the balls up in the air, that's just, for me at least, that's not the goal. That's not what I'm after. I'm sure it's not what you're after either. So I think to get clear on the goal, even if you have to keep the momentum going as you move toward that, that's a different thing. But I would get clear on the goal. I also think if you're careful or thoughtful and prepare, you can bank blog posts ahead of time, or you can republish your greatest hits. And frankly, this is what I'm going to do on my upcoming sabbatical. I've been so busy with the book tour or with the launch of the book and with my daughter's wedding and everything else I've had going on this spring that I haven't been able to bank some posts in advance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going through and finding my top 10 posts of all time, and I'm going to republish those. I'm going to state very clearly that these are from the archive, but I think there's a lot of my readers today that have never been exposed to that content because it's buried in the archives, and you would never find it unless you're searching in Google and just happen to stumble upon the keywords. So that's one strategy. And frankly, I think it's okay if you have a loss of momentum. This is the whole thing with seasons. You have to plant, you have to harvest, you have to water, and then there's a time when you just leave the ground fallow and then you start planting again in the spring. So I think it's okay to have a little loss of momentum. It'll come back. And for me, that takes, some faith on my part to believe that it will, and it's kind of an act of discipline, but I'm looking forward to that. And I know I will lose some momentum as I'm disengaging during this sabbatical, but that's okay. I'll get it back. I really believe. And if I don't, then it wasn't meant to be. If it requires my constant intervention to keep the plate spinning and to keep the whole machine running, there's something wrong with that I don't like. The next question comes from Tony Paganelli.
Hi, Michael. This is Tony Paganelli. I'm a lawyer from Indianapolis, Indiana, and my blog is at tonypaganelli.com. I'm a longtime fan, and I love the new podcast. I don't usually unplug on vacation because I find that it's more stressful worrying about what's landing in my inboxes when I'm not looking than it is just to monitor things while I'm away. Is there some logic to this approach, or is it just a sign that my addiction is really bad? Thanks very much. Bye.
Well, only you can assess, Tony, whether your addiction is really bad and whether this need to constantly check while you're gone is coming from that, or if there's some other reason that's driving it. I'm not one of these people that just says you have to completely unplug or you're a bad person. Again, I would go back to the purpose and what it is you're trying to accomplish. And if in fact it is more stressful for you, then, do the less stressful thing, check in occasionally. But again, I would put strict boundaries around it. The next question comes from Wayne Stiles.
Hi, Michael. This is Wayne Stiles from Aubrey, Texas, and I blog at waynestyles.com. On a vacation, I still schedule my posts and podcasts, but the challenge is Twitter. Would you suggest that we load up Buffer or Hootsuite with 50 tweets for the week, or just let it go? For somebody who's developed the habit of scheduling a dozen daily tweets, it's tough to just go cold turkey for the week.
Yeah, I'm like you, Wayne. I typically schedule my tweets in the morning using Buffer app. I wouldn't say I schedule them, but I put them in the queue so that they're published throughout the day. And so to go cold turkey is a big deal, but I'm planning to do it. And I've done it before. In fact, I've got a post, and there's a link in the show notes to a post I wrote called What I Learned from My 48-Hour Twitter Fast. So this is just one time when I fasted from Twitter for 48 hours, I blogged the results. And I'll tell you some of the results. There were really three different conclusions that I came to. First, my posting frequency did affect my growth rate. My growth rate with Twitter slowed during that point. So it kind of goes back to Michelle's point that I did lose momentum, but that was okay. When I got back on Twitter, it resumed immediately. Then Twitter doesn't really take that much time. So if you want to engage in it, fine. But again, I would just try to keep it sort of quarantined or keep it within some boundaries so that you don't become absent to the people that you're physically present with, and somehow you're not emotionally available or spiritually available to them during that time. And then the other conclusion I came to was that Twittering provides an opportunity for me to share my insights. So a lot of times as I'm reading, I love to share the things that I'm learning with my followers. But again, there's a time for everything under the sun, as Ecclesiastes says. And for me, I'm going to completely unplug. And I don't also want to give the false impression that I'm, still at work, still kind of going through the motions when I'm really not. And so for me, it would be a little bit disingenuous to try to schedule up, in my case, 2 weeks of Twitter posts when I'm not actually, on the scene, really interacting with people. But again, that's just me. So the question I would leave you with at the end of this episode is, what suggestions do you have for getting the most from your vacation? I'm sure that you have some ideas. You've learned some things through the years, so please share it with a larger community. And you can go to my blog at michaelhyatt.com/018, as in episode 18, michaelhyatt.com/018, and leave some of your best suggestions for getting the most from your vacation. A few announcements. The platform book does continue to do well. It remains in Amazon's top 500 books overall, which is fantastic a month after the initial publication. It's still number one in several categories, and it's number two right now as I'm doing this podcast in marketing. So if you haven't bought it yet, I hope you will, and you can find more at michaelhyatt.com/platform. I just returned from West Palm Beach, Florida, where I spoke this last weekend at an event hosted by John Maxwell. Man, we had a blast. About 800 people there. I loved interacting with the people in the audience, and I gave my platform speech. And I just thought I'd mention, if you're interested in having me speak on this topic, I'd love to talk with you or with your company or your organization. And I can customize the content for your particular industry. I've done this for mortgage bankers, real estate agents, small businesses, churches, etc. But if you're interested, visit michaelhyatt.com/speaking. And as I mentioned, I'm going on vacation until Friday, July the 20th. And I'm not going to be producing a podcast while I'm away. So I'll be scheduling my next podcast for Wednesday, July the 25th. So use this time to perhaps catch up on my previous episodes or listen to some other podcasters and get exposed to the amazing array of content that's available. But you can find my entire archive of podcasts at michaelhyatt.com/This Is Your Life. Well, that's about it for this episode of This Is Your Life. I'd be very grateful if you would rate my podcast on iTunes. That helps tremendously with keeping my podcast visible so people who have never heard of it can discover it. But if you'd like to comment on this episode, please go to michaelhyatt.com, go to the show notes for this episode, and scroll down to the comments section. I'd love to hear from you, your comments, your questions, whatever. But until next time, remember, your life is a gift. Now go make it count.
This is your life. Are you who you wanna be? This is your life. Are you who you wanna be?